What I really love about boilers is every boiler is done differently. The way it's piped, the way it's, mounted on the wall, everything's done differently. And so it's really cool for me to go into a job and see the other company and how they've done their system. And there's some really cool systems I've seen online where they go put diamond plate on the wall and they have LED lights and all kinds of cool stuff. Welcome back to another video, Grant's Heating and Air. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming and checking out our channel. We took an old cast iron boiler, which we're going to show photos of. Unfortunately, we don't have video of that, but we went to a high efficiency unit that can sit on the wall. This particular one is called a Navien Fire Tube boiler. The old boiler that was here had a lot of issues. There was black soot everywhere. We do have a photo of the old cast iron boiler that was sitting here on the floor. So this is in a residential application at 7,500 feet in elevation. Propane, which is expensive here in our area in Colorado, it made sense to go to a high efficiency boiler. This one is 95% efficient. We had some other challenges with this system. There were loops in the floor that were not heating properly. The customer complained about certain areas that were hot, others that were not. So I came in with a FLIR camera, which is a thermal imaging camera. We got all the zones as hot as we could, and I could see all the loops in the floor, see where each of the zones were heating, determine where the thermostats were located compared to where the floors were heating. So we did a complete evaluation of the system before we replaced it. Now, we didn't do any of the PEX work. This was all existing in the home. So we just reattached all of that PEX line to the new boiler system, and we repiped it with new pumps and new zone controller. One thing I really like about the Navien boiler system is the many stages of heating that it has available. It's not just 100% on like a cast iron boiler typically is. You might get 2 stages out of a cast iron boiler, but this one's many stages, and I'll put up the stages on the screen. I can't remember if it's 12 or 15. We'll put that on the screen on how many stages, and they call that the turn down ratio on this system. This is a fire tube boiler, and I will show you the inside of this boiler. This is new technology. We were also able to add a Wi-Fi thermostat to the main floor zone so that the customer can monitor the system. This is a Pro 1 thermostat that has Wi-Fi, and this is what we connected for this customer so they could have Wi-Fi access to their boiler. I will share some photos of the installation process. This did take us a few days to do, so that'll be neat to show. Let's go over just some of the components here. What we've installed are Grundfos circulating pumps. These are 3-speed pumps that we're able to dial in whether we need more speed, more flow, more head pressure. We can do that with each one of these pumps. We put in isolators for each pump so that these will be easy to service in the future. Each one has its own isolation valve. Over here, we have a 6-zone relay pump and zone control system. This allows us to take in the thermostat wires that are coming from each thermostat, control each one of the pumps individually, and gives us a very clean look. I don't know if you've seen boiler systems where there's just spaghetti wires everywhere. We make sure that we put thermostat clamps in. We're using MC cable, doing a really nice job keeping each one of these clean on the installation. We're also using the proper brackets that are not dissimilar in metal that can cause issues with corrosion over time. This is called the NaviClean by Navien. It has a magnet inside that is trapping a bunch of those black minerals and iron deposits that can be within the circuit and helps protect the tankless. So we install this on every tankless boiler job that we do. It's really easy to do maintenance. You can isolate on the back. Let me see if I can get Miss Ayla to zoom in here. Okay, so you can see the little green light here. This indicates that this is open. So these are really easy to turn and close. There's one below it as well down here, which we can turn and close. This one's on the bottom. That allows us to isolate this entire filter, and then we can just unscrew it, clean it out, put it right back in. Really nice filter to protect your tankless equipment from Navien. So down here we have our air separator. This is called a spiral vent. We like these because it's a micro bubble separator. What that means is there's like a screen in here, and the bubbles actually get trapped on the screen and they collect, and then they collect enough to actually bubble up, and they come up into this area which has a float. This is a replaceable head. The junior vent head is replaceable, and then air will come out of this little hole right here if there's any air in the system. This is a lot better than a scoop design where the scoop is just trying to trap bubbles and letting them out with a vent. Below that, you'll see our expansion tank. This is an EX30 made by Amatrol. These have a new indicator on the bottom. We'll see if we can show you that here in a minute. That will tell you if the tank has failed, which is a very nice feature. So before, the way we would test these, and we still do test them this way, is to just listen. Here it sounds hollow and then solid. So there's a big balloon in here with pressure underneath. And we set that pressure based on the boiler loop pressures, and that allows when the boiler gets hot, the water's expanding, and this is a closed loop, meaning that the water's not changing, it's staying in the same loop and going around and around. So as we heat that water, the molecules are expanding. That needs somewhere to go. So that pushes down on this bladder and can fill this tank, and then as the water cools, it can come back up so that we don't have pressure issues at the boiler. So on the Amatrol EX30, this is that indicator. This will turn red if there's a water leak internally in the tank, and it should be clear like it is now. I don't know exactly how to say this name, Axiom, A-X-I-O-M. But anyway, this is a very nice pH neutralizer that we use on our boilers. It actually looks like it needs service, to be honest. We haven't been here in 2 years on this installation, so I'm going to recommend maintenance for this customer. But you can see how much has built up in here. It's very important on leach fields and septic systems. Any high efficiency equipment that is gas creates a very acidic moisture when it's running. The condensate's very acidic, so we run it through this media to neutralize the pH to make it safe to go into the septic system's leach fields. We don't want very acidic acid going in there, killing the natural bacteria and things that are doing what it should be doing to break down that material. So this is protecting that. And this is coming off the heat exchanger when it's new and continue to collect materials that need to be cleaned, typically once a year. We like using these because they do have an internal bypass, so if there ever is a problem with it getting plugged up, it'll still let it drain, but this little indicator pops up and tells the customer that they need service and it needs to be cleaned. I'm going to talk a little bit about the old B-vent. B-vent is a double wall venting system that can handle high temperatures from low efficiency equipment or 80% efficiency equipment. Anyway, it's not high efficient. We were able to cap that, close that off. And then if you look over here, these were two 8-inch combustion airs. Combustion air bring in free combustible air that needs to come into the room to supply the boiler when it's running. Combustion air is required because we are pulling that air into the flame, into the burning process of the equipment. So if this room was all closed off and the flame is trying to burn, it's going to eat up the oxygen in the room and actually snuff out the flame. So that's what the combustion airs are for. But what's neat is those are just pouring in super cold air in the wintertime, especially up here in the mountains at 7,500 feet. We were able to close those off and keep that cold air out of the house because it does make its way around the house down here in the basement. Okay, so I want to show you the new PVC and CPVC venting system of the Navien Fire Tube boiler. The reason why this is gray is because this is CPVC. This is normal PVC. So why do we use this little bit of CPVC and then go back to PVC? The reason being is because we are allowed to turn this boiler up on a dip switch, which will allow it to reach 180 degrees when you use CPVC, because the flue gas temperatures are too hot for PVC. Out of the factory, these come ready for PVC only. You have to install CPVC in order to turn on the dip switch that allows it to go to that higher temperature. You're only required to do it for a certain distance and adding the elbow is quite a bit of distance in the feet if you look in the manual. So this is what we were required to do for the CPVC application to allow the higher temperatures. I want to show you guys the inside of the Navien Fire Tube boiler. So it's got 2 clamps on top. You just pull those back and we'll get a better look at it here in a sec. There's 2 on the bottom. And now we can just simply lift this off. Oh, the seal's a little tight over time, so let me get that off of there. There it comes. There it is. Okay. And you can see that rubber seal there. Just over time with the heat kind of gets stuck a little bit. So up here at the top we have our air vent. This is getting any trapped air in the system out. Typically you only open this when you're first commissioning the system. It even tells you here to close this when you're done. This is the air vent screen. This can be easily serviced by removing this screw and then pulling it out, cleaning it, and putting it back in. So that's protecting from bugs and bees and birds or something couldn't get in here. They're gonna get stuck right there. This little white cap is for combustion analysis. What's combustion analysis? Well, it's one of our very expensive meters that we invest in that allow us to tune the boiler exactly to the right altitude and gas output. By putting in our probe, we can pull in those flue gases and can read the information on the analyzer and make the right decisions to adjust gas pressure. I don't know too many companies that actually do that. They just turn it on and walk away. So that's what that port is. This is what we call the inducer motor. So this is what's pulling in the gas from the gas valve and then mixing with the air. There is a just open tube here. This is where all that air I showed you before up there was coming in, and it's allowed to come in through here. It kind of has a Venturi's like snorkel effect going through there. And here we can see the turn down ratio, which is 15:1. That means this boiler has 15 different stages that it can operate in. This is our gas valve. This is what I talked about that we adjust when we do our combustion analysis on top. There is a little Allen key here that gets us access to that. And based on the manual, you never turn it more than a quarter turn. What we find is we just have to turn it maybe a tenth or an eighth, and it just tunes right in. So that's your adjustment for that. One of the really cool things I like about Navien is almost everything can be fixed with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. These are actually plates that you can pull out that will give you access to these parts. You just pull them out and they come out. Very easy to service, and you don't need a lot of crazy tools. So this is really nice because it'll show us a bunch of information like the status of the boiler, what it's currently doing is in standby, its heat capacity, and some different information. This is the back button. We can see here our space heating operation, set temps for that, the different pumps that we want to run during that call. Domestic hot water operation, here again what pumps we want, and just all kinds of different options that we can set up for the installation. And here we can even get right into our error history. And I was looking through this to see in 2 years if we had any error, and we do have one. See the 302 error. Let's push the button and see low water pressure. But if you look at the date, that's the day the boiler was installed. So that's why I had low water pressure as we were purging the system. This is your space heating, whether it's on or off. That's going to be just a radiant floor. This is our domestic hot water, whether it's calling. And then this is the temperature of the radiant floor. And this is the temperature of the domestic. And then this is our temperature outside. And this is the current pressure of the boiler, 13.6 psi. That is perfect. So that's just a quick overview. There's a lot more you can go through in here. This is a very nice interface, easy to use, easy to see for the customer, and it will flash if there's any errors. It'll definitely let you know if there's a problem. I mean, it'll turn red and flash the error right at you. So there's really no guesswork, and it actually tells you what the error is without having to look it up. Most of them you're like, oh, what's the double flash mean? Or what's the error E324 mean? You know, here you can just click it and it literally describes to you what that error is. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick look at the fire tube. This is where we were actually very surprised, as this is new technology. There is almost 5 gallons of water in here. We thought, no way, this is insulation, there's the fire tube, but there is almost 5 gallons of water being maintained within this system. Up here you have an ignition system, you have your spark igniter and your flame sensor. There's some other things down in here, some transformers and some other stuff, but just kind of wanted to give you the overview of what a fire tube boiler looks like and some of the functions and some of the parts inside. Okay, we're gonna put the door back on. So there's a little hook on top that it can just set on to get started. And then of course you want to line up there, and then you're just gonna clamp these over. You see that? Just like that. And then the same thing on the bottom. Okay, there we go. Sure everything's looking good. Nothing's stuck in the door. Yep. Okay. Funny story real quick. One time, David, my installer, who was the lead on this, we went and did a service call for a customer on a Navien unit, and it was an old Navien. And we were putting the door back on, and he caught one of the wires on the bottom, and it actually shorted out the entire control board, just because there was a wire dangling down and it grounded out. We thought, oh, it's just got to be a fuse. No, it took out the entire control board. So he will never forget that. David, I know when you watch this video, you'll never forget that. Navien's done a lot better since then and have put their wires in little covers and things to keep them safe, and we don't find that they can accidentally get caught in the door, not near as much as like the older system. This is called an SSU for power. It does have a fuse inside here that you can see. It's a time delay fuse, and the power switch on and off, which is isolating the power for the entire boiler. So if we need to do service, we can shut this off. It will turn off all the pumps, zone board, everything. And then we put a nice dedicated single outlet. This is smart because a lot of customers will think, oh, an extra outlet, and they'll plug in their vacuum or whatever they want, and it can cause problems with the system. I want to pause here for a moment and thank everybody for watching. If you can like and subscribe, it really helps our channel and our small family-owned business stand out. So thank you guys for watching. Let's get right back to it. Over here we've got our water feed. This is what is bringing water into the boiler and controlling that pressure that we wanted, right? 13 optimal. When it gets hot, probably around 20. But this is set from 12 to 15 psi and is hooked to the domestic cold of the home, so the water supply to the home. And if the boiler ever needs a little bit of water, that's what this is doing, is feeding that. We have isolation valves on either side. This is a backflow preventer. So what's a backflow preventer do?
Prevents.
So what it does is, if the domestic water in the home was ever shut off, or whatever it might be, and we lose pressure in the home, just at the sink, right? Well, you've got a higher pressure in the boiler, and we don't want that closed loop that could have glycol in it, which is an antifreeze, or just water that's been circulating. We don't want that to come back into the home, which might be in your glass of water or your shower. So that's what this is preventing. If the pressure drops in the home, the pressure inside the boiler cannot return into the domestic of the home. We're going to dive a little bit into what we have here, which is an indirect hot water heater. This is a triangle tube indirect hot water heater. Indirect means it's not supplying its own hot water. As you would see in a traditional hot water heater, it would either have a burner on the bottom or it would have electrical elements in it. This is just a storage tank for the boiler. It has its own zone, has its own pump, has its own aquastat, which is how hot do we want it. And when there is a drop in temperature in the tank, the aquastat will close the contacts, comes through, and goes directly to the system, which tells it there's a domestic hot water call. This particular system we set up for priority. And what does priority mean? That means that this domestic hot water tank has priority over the space heating in the home. This particular boiler has 200,000 BTUs of heat available. Now that's without D-rate and altitude, but it's rated at 200,000. So when this tank needs hot water, we're able to give all that BTU heat into this tank. A traditional water heater is like 35,000, 45,000 BTUs. That's the most you're going to get, where this is going to be able to put, with D rating and all that, it might be 150,000 BTUs, which is going to recover this tank very quickly. So they're never going to run out of hot water. The amount of recovery will be faster than the 50 gallons they could use in this tank. Okay. It will be faster than the 40 gallons they can use in this tank. This is a Smart 40, rated at 36 gallons. But because we set it up as a priority in the system and we give it the full heat, they never run out of hot water. It will recover in less than 10 minutes, the entire tank. And it can do that while they're using hot water. This air vent looks like it's seen some use and could be replaced, so I'd recommend that on maintenance. So the triangle tube have a lifetime warranty. It is made in Belgium, and they do last a very, very long time. So traditionally, where you would see, 12 years out of a hot water tank, maybe 16. I know some of you in the comments are like, I got 25 years. Well, great for you, but most hot water tanks are going to fail at 12 to 18, maybe 18. This particular tank should last 30 years. There's a large copper coil that is going around and around inside the tank, and that's where it's dispersing that heat energy to the colder water. Since hot goes to cold, that heat from the boiler coming through at 180 degrees. And you guys might remember me talking about the CPVC. We can get a fast recovery rate at 180 degrees. So that's why we run the CPVC, set the dip switch, and prioritize the tankless to handle the domestic. This is a recirculating water pump that allows the customer to have almost instant hot water at the sinks in the home. So you can see there's many return lines in this home. This is a large home, and each one of those lines is coming from a section in the home, and the pump is pumping this way, and it's coming through and pushing down into the cold, which is forcing the hot back up, and that hot will disperse to each one of those and do a loop. And it goes around and around like that. And we have check valves to make sure the water never goes the wrong direction. So this is neat, and we put it on a switch for the customer. So when they're not here, they don't have to waste that heat energy constantly circulating through the home. Now there are nicer ones that you can install with timers on them. So if you're a full timer, we can install one that you can schedule, and you don't have to worry about the on and off switches. You can just schedule them. So thanks for coming along on this video and checking out the Navien Fire Tube boiler system we did for a customer. If you guys have questions, comments, please leave them below. I love answering people's questions about it and different applications.